Yamaha Canada Music, we are all musicians, so we know there's more to making music than instrument specifications. There's magic in this stuff, and we're on a constant quest to understand how to harness that magic in our own creative process, in the tools that we choose, in the music that moves us. The greatest musicians on the planet play Yamaha. They are inspired by the instruments we make, and we are inspired by the music they create. Welcome to Yamaha 440 Sessions.
Okay, I'm a keyboardist and a musical director. Is that cool? One more time?
Just like that.
Yeah. Okay. Get into like the zone, you know what I mean? Hi guys, I'm Sid Harris. I'm a keyboard player and I'm the musical director for Ruth B and Loony. I started playing roughly around like, I want to say like 6, but it started on drums. Like I was a drummer first. Self-taught, mainly self-taught. My parents put me into drum lessons when they saw the desire, but then I never liked it. Like I hated the way the teacher was teaching me, and you know, I'm like, you know, let me just go back to my pots and pans. My journey for music started like I think it's the passion for it started there, but like because I went to music school, like I went to Humber College, but also too like in high school, like I always loved music, so I was always like just doing music 24/7. That journey was something, but it just was something that was just ongoing. Like, you know, I can't really rap. Oh yeah, I did lessons, I did this, and it was just basically a pot of things, you know? I went to school for jazz drumming because I want to be a jazz drummer. I want to be, like, honestly, like my role model is Larnell Lewis. So I want to be exactly that. I'm like, I just want to be a jazz drummer, doing fusion, all that stuff. But in school, they were lacking a keyboard player, like a keyboardist for the gospel choir. So word got around that like, yo, Sid plays keys, and he's good, like Sid plays keys. So they asked me like, hey, can you actually play keys for the gospel choir and like can play organ for the gospel choir? I'm like, sure, why not? And then that's kind of when my love for keys really started. But the joke is I never called myself a keyboardist. Like when people brought that term to me, I'm like, don't ever call me a keyboardist. I am a drummer, like don't. But now look, I'm a keyboardist. I'm sitting here as a keyboardist because I love it. Humble for this gig, for this job, and then that's how I kind of met Ruth. And from my first encounter with Ruth, it was just like best friends, you know. Like that's how I got that relationship with her. My sister actually, when she was taking piano, like her boards were Yamaha, so like Yamaha was kind of always been around the house. When I actually kind of found the love for keyboards myself, I always want to find a keyboard that can give me that warmth and also can give me that you know, I'm a big boy, so like give me that big boy sound. And to be honest, Yamaha was the only keyboard that can do it for me. Like, you know, like I tried everything else, but like I gotta find a keyboard that represent me, and Yamaha was it, you know. So I've been rocking with the Yamaha ever since, man. The first professional Yamaha I played was the Motif, the ES, and oh my gosh, all the Motifs, to be honest, I loved. From the Mo to the XF to even to the Montage, like, you know. I love it all. The thing that I love about it the most, and like was like where they're going, is it's so much easier to access sounds and even to load sounds, even to create a set. Like there's so much easier. Like even they have like you guys put a new setting called live sets, and I can load so many presets already where at a click of just a touch, I can go through my sounds, you know. And before, like with the Motif, you couldn't really do that. You have to like stop, scroll, find, even like, and then you have to memorize numbers just to get the right set. But like everything here is just, it's like a page, man. You just press. So like that's one thing I love. And I also think what I love too the most about the Montage and the MODX, you can load so many sounds into like one layer. Like you have up to 8, I think there's up to 16 sounds, but like in the Motif you only have 4. So you get around with it, but having 8, oh, that's gonna, if I can tell like, okay, we're about to like ramp up and Pastor wants something heavy, I can just press on my brass patch and like I'm there. Or I can load it, just slide it in. Before, everyone got to, I had to like, oh no, wait. you know. But with this live set, like it's there. I can just, oh, I'm with you, and it doesn't stop the flow. It doesn't hinder the flow. You know, everything just seamless. The live set's actually the best feature. The analog pad, the full concert grand, a little, what's it called, after 1980 or a 1916 patch with the brass, and then you have the bells, and you have like your J-pop bells. That is like you'll hear that patch in every song. The bells, the brass, the pad, and what's it called, and the nice crunchy piano with the release. You have to add the release to it. That's what makes it real gospel. When you release it to like probably like -11, well, -11 is like really steep for some people, but I release it to like 5, maybe -7. But yeah, that's the patch, man. That's perfect. Like, that's what I'm looking for. Like, quick, just let me get these my patches now, and I can do the whole concert. Like if I'm doing Ruth, I'm more picking songs for her records. So sometimes I would just call for just a grand piano. And maybe I add my little sauce with a little pad. And that's how I go to analog pad, or I go to like a sign, you know, something that can just give it a little bit more body to be like, yo, I know it's a grand, but it sounds a little different. So she plays live. So sometimes she'll play a few songs live. Like, so, like for instance, she'll play Lost Boy live, In My Dreams live, or Unrighteous. I think that's the name of the track. Oh, don't shoot me. Live, you know, but yeah, but she'll play like maybe two songs on the set live. Sometimes I may add a little pad, a little color there, like if she asks for it, but majority of the time, no, that's what she's playing. We use multi-tracks, so it's like all like her stems, just regular stems that we plug into Ableton. So like stuff that we can't, like, you know, for some of the claps for like drums and some of the unnecessary pads that like I don't really need to be playing. So actually the bass player, like we let the bass player control that. Like they asked me to do it, but I'm like, you can take on that, you know. So bass player control it, but if he's not there, if it's just me and Ruth, then I control it. So we both can control it. It's either me or the bass player. I've just been playing, rehearsing, getting to know, especially these boards, you know. Also like rehearsing, because right now, like I also play, I'm the keyboardist MD for Loony. She's an up and coming artist out of Toronto. So right now we're just been learning her music, and like because we have a show coming up, hopefully after this all calms down. So it'll be like kind of her first launch, like, you know, concert. So just been learning the music for that, like getting the band ready, like learning my parts. So it's all R&B, like R&B and soul, like R&B soul fused with jazz. It's real nice. Like it's that feel good living room, you know, get your family around, eat some, like, you know, eat some soul food music, and it's really good. Mainly eat some E-pianos. I'm now added to my set organ, like an organ sound, so some B3 in there. But mainly E-pianos, some pads, the odd time of piano, like a grand piano in there for certain songs, but mainly E-pianos. Yeah, right now like this K75 amp E-piano is like it's my go-to. It's my go-to. Before it was it was like soft chords, so like I forgot what it's called on the motif. But this one right here is K75. That's my go-to. What do you mean? It's warm. Like what I like about it, that's warm. You know? What's there not to like about it? It just gives me exactly what I need. Like it responds to my finger well. Like I can, you know, when you're like starstruck and you're just falling in love with something, you're speechless. That's what that patch does to me. Like, yeah, man. Yeah. I tend to layer it with a pad. So right now I have this pad with it. So on its own, this is the pad. Layer it, bring everything in together. Just give it a little bit more body. Then I can. Thanks, man.
Sid Harris. What a privilege to know that guy, and speaking to him is pure joy. I don't know if I've ever encountered anyone that has more passion for music and instruments than Sid. Thank you, Sid. Sid will be back later. I would like to say welcome. We are making history tonight. This is episode 1 of Yamaha 440 Sessions. We are so happy that you could be here with us tonight. We're trying to do something meaningful here. And what I mean by meaningful is, a lot of times manufacturers talk about our instruments and the specifications and all the features, all good stuff. But at the end of the day, all of these amazing instruments that we create are used for making music. And so what we want to do in Yamaha 440 Sessions is bring you music making, bring you the people that are making music, and bring you how they're using these instruments in their music making. So we hope that you will join us again and again, and we hope that you will get something from these sessions that helps you in your own music making. Before we go further, if it turns out that you love what's happening tonight, I'd like to direct you over to our Facebook page. It's at Yamaha Canada Solutions. It looks like that. And you can sign up. You don't have to, it's public. But if you sign up, we'll give you notifications every time a new session is happening. And the plan right now is for the session to happen once a month, so the second Thursday of every month. We also have Steinberg Sessions, which is a music production group that talks about making music with software, Cubase in particular, and we do that on the last Thursday of every month. So there's a stream happening every couple of weeks, and but we're also going to do some special edition Yamaha 440 Sessions as well. We've got a big plan for the fall, which we'll keep under wraps for now, but it's coming. It's going to be great. Can't wait to share that with you. Anyway, tonight is all about Yamaha Montage, Yamaha MODX, Sid Harris, and our next guest, who I'm lucky to call my friend. Her and her partner Devin are not strangers to our live streams. They've been with us before. These people are amazing, and not only are they amazing and some of the nicest people that I know on the planet, they are also some of the most talented people. And when you hear all of the things that Gina can do, you will be as blown away as I am. Ron Hawkins from The Lowest of the Low recently said that watching Gina behind a keyboard is like a TED Talk, tomato, tomato. Amazing. And I've seen Gina play, and she rocks so hard that mere mortal keyboard stands can't always keep that keyboard where it's supposed to be. Without further ado, let's join with Gina via Skype.
Hello.
Hey, Gina.
Hi. Thank you for that intro.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure, and it's our pleasure to have you here. And I've been looking forward to this since we first talked about it, because there's so many things to talk about. You are a MODX player, which fits in with tonight's theme, but you play a whole bunch of Yamaha instruments in a whole bunch of different projects. And we'll get to that in a second. But let's talk a little bit about your past, your music. Like, how did you, tell me about your journey to playing. You're from the East Coast.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I guess it all started out in the Far East. Whenever I talk about my guitars or cars, everybody's quick to point out the accent.
Nice.
Yeah, so I mean, like most Nova Scotia comes to growing up and being a musician. So I did not play the fiddle, but my aunt is a bagpiper, so I did learn how to play the bagpipes at one point. But yeah, I grew up playing piano at a very young age. My mother loves to say that she saw me teaching myself piano when I was like 2 or 3, which I think she might be stretching a little bit. But yeah, so piano was my first instrument. I did go to Acadia music school out there, so I took voice, and I was a flautist, I was a guitar player, I played the bass, I had my fingers in everything. And my mother was, and is still a wonderful human who just totally nurtured that and encouraged me to pursue my passion in music. And so, of course, that usually brings you to Toronto, where I am now residing, and where I play in multiple projects. And I'm very, grateful that I get to do fun stuff like this and meet amazing people like you and do these fun things.
Thanks, Gina. So I'm noticing you have excellent mic technique. So is it possible that perhaps you are also a voiceover artist?
Why, it could be. It depends if batteries are included or if it's coming out on Tuesday or whatever catchphrase you need.
So talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get into the music. But I love that you do this, and I think it's really cool.
It's kind of the best complimentary gig I can have to being a musician, because as I'm sure you know, lots of jobs don't love when you leave for a month or two at a time. So luckily this job allows me to do that. So yeah, I had a brief stint, a couple years in radio alongside my music career, and a lot of radio folks jump over to the voiceover world as well. So I was lucky enough to have that door open to me, and it's been quite fun. It's been quite a ride. I'm the voice of Pizza and
Nice.
St. Ives and a whole bunch of big brands. So
Amazing. So next time we're listening to the radio or we're hearing ads on TV, we'll hear Gina. It's pretty fantastic. Well, that's really fun. So you studied voice at Acadia. So piano's your first instrument, and you studied voice at Acadia. And the funniest thing is that, like, how I met you, I didn't even, when I first met you, I didn't know you did either of those things as much as you play guitar and bass and write songs and do all that stuff. So what was the evolution from, sort of traditional piano vocal education into rock and roll and writing songs and playing the bass and guitar?
Growing up, it was very structured, Royal Conservatory, that kind of thing. But in the background, I was always writing my own songs. It started with, I guess, just kind of like a poetry thing that sort of morphed into songs when I was very young. I started writing my own music when I was 13 or 14 on the piano. And again, just kind of through friends that I knew, when you're not in school doing your rudiments and your scales, you're jamming with each other, and of course there's the legendary kitchen parties from Nova Scotia. So
Nice.
that's where you
Yeah.
really start flexing your chops. And honestly, it was a big reason why I started loving jamming with people. And that's a big part of how I learned the steps towards rock and roll. And then when I got to Toronto, there's so many opportunities here to play. If you're willing to do it, then people are more than willing to have you. So I've been very lucky to meet some amazing artists who I now call my dear friends and my Toronto family here. And it just kind of kept growing and growing, and I'm just riding the wave.
Amazing. So there are rock and roll kitchen parties. They're not all sort of East Coast folk fiddle
Yeah.
type music. Is rock and roll happening at these
It
parties?
depends on the time, as it gets later and later, the Celtic wears off, and it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So one project that you do is with your partner Devin. It's called Altered by Mom. And you guys had a heck of a year last year. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So like everyone, we were affected by the pandemic, and musicians were hit quite hard as well. And, we found ourselves, instead of shows, we had no shows. So what else do you do when you have no shows but decide to release and record and produce and do all these things, a song a week, every week for a year?
Wow. So
So that's what we
52. So 52 songs.
52 songs we ended up releasing at the end of the day. Yeah, a song every single Tuesday. And I popped up on everybody's feed every single week being like, here's another one.
Wow. So did you guys how much of this stuff was written ahead of time, or were you writing as you went?
A little bit of both. So in the beginning, it kind of transformed from what was going to be our next album into this big project. So we were kind of like, let's start releasing some music, but let's take it 10 steps further and let's just keep releasing music. And it also, it was actually quite nice because it kept us up with our chops. We got to experiment even more, I'd say, and go deeper into the stuff that we do have. My partner, is a producer, so we've got a whole treasure trove of instruments and sounds and things to our disposal. So it did start off with a couple of pre-written songs, but as we evolved, we actually took into account Zoom. So we did some co-writes with some friends and got the opportunity to do some that way. We got to work with one of our idols, Nigel Pulsford of Bush X, which was
Very
kind of
cool.
amazing.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, so.
How was that? What was that like?
It was definitely very strange, especially because we just sort of reached out to him and he has no idea who we are. So he was just like, once we kind of realized that we really want to do this and that we're not just some mega fans, he was into it. And yeah, we actually ended up writing 2 songs with him and we did a bit of a video for it and lots of DIY stuff. But yeah, it was an experience I look upon fondly, and it was a really good time, and it really stretched my chops with writing as well as playing different instruments, and also style of music too. Like we really expanded out of just like a rock world. Like we got into some really synthy stuff and some ballads and all over the place.
So it's fair to say these 52 songs were not like piano, guitar, vocal demos. These were like full-blown productions. Like these were records.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, every song is a journey.
Wow, that's some crazy output. And then I understand that you got some licensing opportunities from that as well.
We did, yeah. We actually ended up being on the show Kim's Convenience twice.
Amazing. That's fantastic. Great. How cool. Well, you have, so everybody check out Altered by Mom. They're pretty amazing. And I'm pretty sure they might show up on Yamaha 440 sessions at some point in the not too distant future. But in the meantime, check them out on all the socials. But Gina, you have some other like amazing projects as well. You work with another Yamaha artist, Skye Wallace. Can you talk a bit about that project?
Yeah, absolutely. So Skye is like a sister to me. She's such a dear friend. We actually played music together and we were roommates at one point too. So we were that band that lives and works together. So she's an incredible artist. Absolutely check her out if you haven't yet. She's doing some really big things. She's got new music coming out shortly. I won't give away the dates, but look out for her. But yeah, so she's like that Canadiana rock, kind of a folk punk mixture.
Cool.
So we've gotten to go all across Canada. We went to Reeperbahn before the world shut down. Yeah.
What was that like? That must have been an amazing trip.
I played one of the best shows of my life there. There's a place called Molotov, and it was just like tons of people, sweat dripping off the ceiling. It was out of a movie.
That's a dream. Yeah, that's so great. How
Yeah.
amazing. Cool. So you have Skye's project, but you also, I believe recently just joined another very prominent band here in Canada.
Yeah, that's right. Monowhales.
Monowhales.
Yeah, so that's a recent thing as well. I've actually been technically playing with them for 8 months, but because of the pandemic, we only played like 1 or 2 shows, and then we didn't really play much. So yeah, great. Another, amazing group of folks. They also went to Humber, as Sid did. That he was saying too. Yeah, and they're doing such amazing things. I'm so stoked to be with them as well and play my MODX, and I also play my BB Yamaha bass in that band as well.
So I want to get to the instruments, but let's plug. There's a kind of a big deal Monowhales gig happening soon. Let's talk about that for a sec.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we've got a couple gigs next weekend. We've got a show in Burnstown and then a Toronto cafe thing. But yes, we're playing with I Mother Earth and Our Lady Peace. It just got announced.
Whoa, that's
all
amazing.
Canadian royalty.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank
How
you.
amazing is that?
Yeah.
So good. So I hope everyone out there in Y440 land will check that out as well. So Gina, let's talk about. So you have a couple of Yamaha keyboards, but let's talk about all the instruments and let's talk about how you use them across all these projects.
Yeah, definitely. So for Altered by Mom, we have a few Yamaha instruments. We have the Rev Star, otherwise known as the Dev Star.
The Dev Star.
I had to throw that in. Yeah, I also have, conveniently here, I pulled out my CS. I use this
There it
one.
is.
Yeah.
The Reface. What a
Right.
great little
I
keyboard. Yeah.
love that
Yeah.
keyboard. Use that on a lot of the really funky lead lines and stuff like that for the 52. Of course, the MODX here. Use that a lot. My BB bass as well. So, Yamaha stuff is all over our 52 song sessions. So that was a lot of really fun studio, really getting scronky with the instruments, testing out all kinds of stuff. There's some DX7 on there, like just all
Wow.
over the place.
Taking it back. Vintage. Amazing. That's
Definitely.
great. So in Skye's, like, I mean, do you use all these? Do you play all the instruments in all the groups, or so? What are you doing in Skye's group?
Yeah, so Skye is a bit more of that Canadiana, punk, like here we are, we're here to play, distortion pedals, that kind of stuff. So I play more of a keys role, less of a synth role in that band. So that's, your organ. I have piano moments. This keyboard in particular has a really nice Rhodes and whirly sound that I really like to use.
Yeah.
I also have my little distortion pedal. I don't know if you can see it here.
Oh, very cool. Nice. So maybe we can have maybe you can play that for us.
Of course.
In a bit. We'd love to hear that.
Yeah, definitely. So, So we always joke that, we all have distortion pedals, including me. So that's kind of my role. And then I very vocal heavy as well with Skye's.
Cool. I think it's time all keyboard players have distortion pedals. I think that's a thing.
I think we've started a revolution.
It's long overdue, I think.
I agree.
So, anyway, and so in Monowhales, what do you do with them?
Yep. So Monowhales, I am the bass player. So that involves me playing my physical bass, and it also involves synth bass. And there are some lead lines mixed in there as well. So that's where I can get into some keyboard splits and really kind of get into some really cool, deep synthy heavy bass lines with that band, and as well as playing them. So sometimes I'll kind of play the bass line on here, and then I'll play the bass line on here. So yeah.
I always wondered, like as a keyboard player myself, it's like bass lines are kind of come from my keyboard conception, but I always wondered if people that play bass play keyboard bass differently. Do you find that influences how you play a bass line on a keyboard, or is it just two different things? I would have said they were two different things before I was in this band, but now being in this band, I can definitely draw some similarities, especially when you're in the show and you're switching so fluidly back and forth, because it's not like one moment I'm playing keys and another moment it's literally one song to the next. I'm switching back and forth. And a lot of the times I'll just keep the bass on while I play the bass lines because we switch, our transitions are so quick and stuff. So yeah, I would have said before, it's definitely feels like you're playing a piano, but when you're in it, I don't know, it just feels the bass. I feel it. I don't know. That's cool. So you're busy. Like if you're switching, like you're not just like playing one instrument on one song and then switching to another. Like you're switching back and forth within the songs. Yeah, sometimes I haven't. There'll be a moment where it's more of just when we're switching the transition. I'm going really quickly from one to another. There have been moments where I can switch back and forth, but I try not to, just because sometimes you'll forget that your bass is still on, and I'll hit it, and it'll do that sound that we all love. Yeah. Right. Cool. So can you take us through some of you have a MODX 6 there. That's right. Can you, well, before we make any sound, you told me one of your favorite things about it is the weight. And for those of you that have never actually tried to pick one of these things up, you can kind of pick it up like that. It's so nice. Just because, especially because in a band like Monowhales, where I'm also playing a bass, it means I have to carry a keyboard and a bass. So I think it's 14.5 pounds, and I'm not a very large human. So I very much appreciate how light this is, when you're on day 28 on a tour and you're so tired. It's nice. So it's the ultimate touring keyboard, perhaps. So can you take us through some of the sounds? I know you're patched in there, so it would be cool if you could kind of show us some of the things that you do and how you use the keyboard. Yeah, absolutely. So for Skye's stuff,
that Rhodes kind of sound. I find it's a nice balance between being a really heavy keyboard sound, but that can also blend in with a lot of the guitars and kind of has that, contemporary sound to it. And then once I add my distortion pedal into it, you can kind of.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, so that kind of beefs that up a little bit. There's also the whirly, which I love as well, for those, like those softer moments. I can really get in there with that one. It's kind of nice, brings it down. It's a nice emotional part of the show. Also goes really nicely with a lot of vocals because Skye is an amazing singer. So, her vocals are obviously the forefront of the whole thing. So that also blends nicely with that. So that's kind of the role that I do with Skye with this keyboard in particular.
Are those presets, or did you mess with those at all? Like, have you adjusted them, or are those just the built-in sounds?
So these two in particular that I just played with Skye are the built-in sounds, but with my distortion. And then
Cool.
with monos, that's where I took my presets and I made them my own.
Okay, can we hear some of that?
Definitely. So so like I was saying, Monowhales is very synth heavy and things like that. So a lot of the bass lines are very thick and.
Wow.
Yeah, that's where you really.
What a sound! That's incredible. Fantastic.
Yeah. So that is the monster lead, which normally sounds like this. And then, but when I add in, and then you hear all the reverb and stuff. But then, so I took the reverb and the delay and all that out of there, and I added my portamento to it. So it really kind of, you get that slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So that's just it sounds like it's got more bottom end somehow. So that was just taking the effects off and adding the portamento.
Yeah, and I just kind of played with some of the elements, especially with some of the other ones too. You can like in this sound in particular. So there's one that's the cool FM disco. So when we're talking about making the sound thicker and things, this one I tripled it up and detuned it, and then octave it down, and that's when it gets
That is incredible. Wow. I'm starting to feel like we need to have you do a Gina Kennedy library that we can share with people, because these are pretty cool.
Thanks.
That's amazing. Wow. Wow. I'm gonna bug you for that sound, or at least how you did it, because I sure like it. That's super cool. So, do you have other sounds there that you can show us, or?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the things that I like to do with it, play with the distortion, play with the portamento, open like the cutoff and I'll, open it up or bring it back down. Also, another thing that I do a lot in this band, I'll switch from a synth bass part to a lead part. So, for example, this is one of the splits that I added, which I really enjoy because it just makes it so easy. And like Sid was saying earlier, too, it's like with the live set, it's all right here. So not only can I have the sound put together, but I can literally click it right away, which is very helpful when you're in the thick of it. So, here's your bass line, but then, you're switching up to your, right? And I mean, those are two completely separate sounds, but they're right there. They're so easy. And splitting the keys too, it's, I found it was kind of a unique thing on this keyboard in particular was you can kind of pick where you want to split. So you can have the same note, have two different sounds if you want, or you can start it, you can only have these 4 notes down here be one part, these 8 be another. And it's all right there. There's the keyboard, like the way that it shows you how you choose it. I don't know, I found it very easy and it very user friendly, I guess.
Cool. Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
I find these keyboards perhaps intimidating when you first get to know them, but once you start digging in, they can be really fast to manipulate. So clearly, you found a way to make some great sounds on there. So you play a lot of Yamaha instruments. What would you say about all these instruments that you have?
Yeah, I mean, they've been wonderful. I've played my fair share of basses and keyboards in my life. This one I find is extremely versatile. Just considering the fact that I can play it in more of a Canadiana band, and then I can play extreme bass lines, and synth leads in another, more tracks and that type of band. That alone I think is a pretty cool thing, plus in a small little package, which is nice. Also, I mean, like with my BB, I didn't expect it to be one of my favorite basses when I first picked it up, but it's got such a nice sound, and it's not your standard P bass too, which is something that I always love. It's kind of unassuming in a way, but then, when I pick it up and I pair it with this beast here.
The Ampeg.
Yeah, my Ampeg.
The sound of bass.
Yeah,
yes.
That's it. It's just the sound of bass, and everything I put it through, it's complementary. I can really kind of find my own sound in it too, which I find is a nice thing. And I could say the same thing about this keyboard as well. I can really find my own sounds in it, which is kind of a cool thing.
Very, very cool. Gina, you are a fountain of knowledge and a fountain of inspiration. And I'm blown away I'm a little rattled by how cool those sounds were. So I hope I recover in time to do what I'm doing next. But thank you so much for being here. And I hope that we can have you back at some point to talk more about, more MODX or even some of the other things that you have going on.
I would love to. This has been so great. And thanks for being so supportive. This is fun, and I'll be here anytime.
All right. And good luck with some of those crazy big shows you have coming up.
Yeah. I'll see you in the front row.
I will probably be there.
Excellent.
Thanks, Gina.
Thanks.
Okay. Wow. We have some amazing friends at Yamaha. Sid, Gina, and in the coming weeks, you will see we have even more amazing friends. Really excited about Y440 next month. We're recording a fantastic interview, and we'll have him live as well. But we're doing an interview in a very cool space, and he's a bit of a rock star, so we hope you'll join us. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some things that I find useful on Montage and MODX. And for those of you that aren't quite sure of the differences between Montage and MODX, they're basically the same engine. They have the same sound library, the same functionality. When you look at the menus, they look the same. The only difference between them really is the Montage has all the features, and the MODX just has a few less things. But that by no means should indicate that the MODX is not a very capable keyboard, as you heard from Gina. And if you get an opportunity to get hands-on with it yourself, you'll see that the MODX is a ridiculously deep keyboard with a whole lot of sounds. And so there's not really anything that you can't do with the MODX, but the Montage just has more. So when we talk about Montage and MODX, we're kind of talking about them interchangeably. So everything that Gina's doing or Sid is doing on one or the other, you can pretty much do on one or the other. I have a beautiful Montage here in front of me, the white one. It does come in white, for those of you that didn't know. And I wanted to talk a little bit tonight about sort of the world that I live in, which is sort of caught somewhere between performance and studio. And I spend a lot of time over here in this DAW called Cubase. And I also spend a lot of time over here with the Yamaha Montage. And so I wanted to talk to you tonight about how I use the two together a little bit, and the type of work that I do outside of my work at Yamaha when I'm producing music. I find that oftentimes a keyboard, just picking a sound and playing it into my production, while I do that quite a bit, there's a lot of times where I find I have audio elements in my session and I want to incorporate them into the sound that I'm playing. Now, those of you that have checked out the Montage and the MODX, you know that it has AWM2, which is like sample-based sounds. It has FMX, which is like the most amazing FM synthesis on the planet. This is not DX7 FM. This is like an entirely next generation level of FM synthesis. But it also, both of these keyboards will load samples. And so I think that when you do that, you can really extend the functionality of what these keyboards do. So in Cubase over here, there's some sound libraries that come with it that are really, really great. And I use them for things that I do quite often. But tonight I took a couple of sounds that I thought were kind of cool that I would typically use that I might want to mess with. And I'm going to import them into the montage, and we're going to do some stuff with them. So I wanted to show you from this Bloom library here. It's all a bunch of vocal samples. So here's a kind of an example of the kinds of things that we have here. Okay, so just vocal samples, which are very cool on their own. But I find when I incorporate them into other sounds, they take on a whole other thing. And some of the other sounds that I took, and this is my way of making pads sound very cinematic and amazing, is from the sample set Noir. And this is all just basically cinematic things. It's just atmospheres. Very cool atmospheres. Okay, so all I do is save those to my USB stick, which is just, you can format it in the Montage or MODX, or you can format it as FAT32 in your PC or Macintosh. And from there, we can load them in. So let's start with this vocal sample I was talking about. So we're going to do the same thing a bunch of times here just to help you guys see what's happening. And hopefully this is a really quick technique that will help you sort of extend the functionality of your keyboard. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to initialize a patch. So we can do that a couple of ways. We have to be in performance mode, home. We can hit category search up here, and it takes us to this page. Or we can hit the name and we can hit category search from here, and it takes us to the same place. So first thing we want to do, initialize, which is right there, and we want to initialize to a normal AWM2 sound. Hit enter, and now we have an initialized sound. And you'll hear it's just this kind of basic piano sample with the release chopped off, and it's, you know, it's just kind of a sort of a weird sounding piano sample. Okay, let's put in our vocal. So we're going to go to part 1 right there. We're going to hit edit, and then we're going to go to new waveform. And in here, you can see in our devices, my USB drive pops up. So I go into my USB drive, and right here is the vocal sample. I hit vocal, and now it loads. So now I have my sample right here on key C3. Okay, so same problem as with the piano sound where the release isn't there. So now what I can do is I can go to tone, and then I can change the release using the knob here. This is the quickest way to do it. Okay, so let's just give it a little bit of a release. Cool, that's probably enough. All right, so now we can play our vocal sample up and down the keyboard. We'll exit from that. Let's go to part 2. And now let's choose a sound from the keyboard that would be a cool sound to blend with that. So we'll go to ethnic and let's use the bouzouki, which is kind of a guitar stringed instrument. Hit enter. And now we will hear the vocal sound with the bouzouki. But there's a problem. They're not playing the same note. Now, perhaps that is the sound that you want for your music, and if you do, that's totally cool. But what I would like to do here is I would like to have them be at the same pitch. So I know that my vocal sound is an A. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to part 1, edit, and I'm going to go to the chorus tuning, and I'm going to turn that A +1 as A sharp to B to C. So now it should be playing a C on the C note, and let's have a listen. Cool. So now we have pretty cool sound. Now if I turn off my vocal sound and we just hear the bouzouki, it's a very cool sound, but I think it's more special when we add the vocal to it. And if you use original samples, that is a sound in the Yamaha Montage that no one else will have. Okay, let's do something similar again. So we're going to go and we're going to initialize the patch one more time. So we go Performance Home, and we go Category Search, and we go Initialize Patch, Initialize Normal, Enter. Okay, same thing, our weird piano sound. Let's load in one of those cinematic sounds. So edit, new waveform, and the USB stick. Let's go with Cinematic 1 here. And this is a pretty cool sound. Okay, awesome on its own. But what I'd like to do in this case is I'd like to pair that, blend that, with a sound that on its own would be sort of the opposite, very smooth and very predictable sounding. So we will exit, we'll go to part 2, and in this case I'm going to go into my pad choir sounds, and I'm going to look for a sound that's called choir service, which is one of my favorite sounds in the Montage and the MODX. So enter. I'm going to turn off over here my cinematic sound just so we can hear this pad on its own, the choir sound. Now there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's a gorgeous sound, and I would use that in a lot of different productions. But if I add the cinematic sample to it, it sounds like this. Certainly more of a sound design type thing there. Here's another quick tip for you using the same concept. If I go in here and let's go and we'll go back to here, and then let's initialize again. So initialize, same thing, enter. Let's add a kick drum. And what I'm going to do here is, for all the electronic music people out here, this is a really fast way to get, you'll hear in a lot of modern electronic productions that the kick drum and the bass line will move up and down pitches together. So anyway, so there is my kick drum. Now I'm not likely to play a bass line up here on the keyboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transpose it down an octave. So the way I do that is with the chorus again, and so we're moving it there. So now it's on C2, so that's my sample there. Okay, so now here's the fastest way for EDM producers to get kick and bass working together. So on part 2 here, I'm going to initialize, and I'm going to initialize it to an FM sound. Now, one of the things that we know from our old days with the DX7 is that when we initialize an FM sound, all it is a sine wave, which is a pretty amazing EDM bass line. So if I do that and hit enter, so now I have a sine wave with my kick drum. So cool. Okay, let's dig back into Cubase here. I'm working on this tune. For those of you that have been to the Steinberg sessions, you know my daughter Siobhan is a singer-songwriter, and we do lots of work together. This is a little tune that we're working on right now. We wrote with a good friend of ours, Rhino, in New York City. And so right now this tune is just at the stage where I'm going to start drum programming. And anyone that has looked at a modern production knows that a lot of times, oftentimes, we will layer multiple drum sounds. So in the particular case of here, I have a kick drum sound. I really like the attack of that, but I wanted it to have a little bit more sustain. So I added this sample to it. Okay, so we have 2 samples. And then in the snare drum, I started with this really sort of bright, thin little thing. But I wanted it to be deeper, and I also wanted it to have an electronic component. So I added this lower sort of acoustic-y type snare drum sound with a little ambience, and then this electronic-y thing, just to give it a little bit of electronic edge. So when you put them all together, you get that. And when you put it with the kick drum, so those are the sounds, the samples that I created for this. Now, a lot of people are like, why, Brent? Why wouldn't you just put the samples and layer them all together and just do it that way? Well, part of the reason is because I like to do this kind of stuff. I love to use transient designers, and I like to use EQs, and I like to use really fun compressors, and more EQs and compressors, and more EQs and compressors, and so on and all kinds of things. So, and I use a lot of processing for those little drum sounds to really get them tailored. The transient designers are pretty important when you're creating samples. But in any case, I use all these plugins to get all this stuff working the way that I want to. And then I bounce them down as a finished sample, and I use them that way. Now, I could load them into a sampler here, and I could mess with them in here, but it's a lot more fun, and I'll show you why, if I load them into the montage and do it that way. So, let's go back to the montage. Let's set up a drum kit, and just quickly, and then we will play with this. So, how do you set up the drums? Same kind of thing. Let's initialize again. So let's do it this way. Category search, initialize, only this time we're going to use the initialize drum. So initialize drum, enter. Cool. So everything looks the same as what we've done, but if we go inside here into edit, we see something different. This is different. And along the bottom, you see bass drum, snare drum, hi-hat close, hi-hat pedal. So this is set up specifically for drum sounds. Now, I can choose bass drum, snare drum on the touchscreen here, but I recommend that you turn on keyboard select here, because what that means is that every time I hit a key on the keyboard, it selects the key that I want. And as it is right now, we've got a lot of just like snare drum, little, again with the attack or the release chopped off. So, so anyway, let's start with the kick drum. And I've already taken the liberty of bouncing out those samples I have in Cubase, and they're on the USB stick, so I can load them in right now. Okay, so I've got C1, that's where I want my kick drum. I'm gonna go new waveform, and there's my kick drum sample right there. It loads, and there's my kick drum sample, Same thing, the cutoff release, except that on the drum page we have this cool thing where receive note off can be turned on and off. And basically what that means, if I turn this off, then when I hit a key, it doesn't send another message when I take my finger off the key. It will just play the whole sample all the way through. Perfect. Okay, let's put the snare on 2 here. Okay, same thing. Let's go new waveform. Snare sample. Same thing, receive note off. Cool. Now let's add a hi-hat, but we won't have a sample. I'll just use something from what's in here. So let's put the hi-hat here, and we'll go into the subcategory up here. Category search, hi-hat, and hi-hat closed, 2 left, that's my favorite one. Enter, same problem. Let's turn receive note off. There, now it's playing all the way through. So now I've got my little drum kit set up here. Okay, so before we go and start recording parts into the computer, what's really important to do is turn local off. So we go into settings, we go into MIDI, and local control off. What's local control? Local control is the actual keyboard itself. And it seems counterintuitive that we would want to turn it off, especially if we're about to record, because now when I play it, I can't hear anything. Why do we want to do that? Because what's going to happen is when local control is on and I play a key, it triggers a note. But when I have it plugged into the computer, the note goes into the computer and then comes back in for a second time. So if I have local control on and I'm recording, I get double triggered notes, which I do not want because that's a terrible sound. So I turned local control off. Now we'll go back to the computer and we can put the MIDI track in record, and so here we go. Now we're live. So let's have a little listen to what we've got here.
This all got really cold. There ain't no washing going. This all got real.
Okay, so we've got it set up as a loop here, and let's record.
This all got really cold. There ain't no washing going. This all got really cold. There ain't no washing going. This all got really cold. There ain't no washing going.
Okay, you're still not compelled. Why is he wasting his time with the montage? This is easily done in the computer. Now I would like to show you why. I will go back to my montage. And now all these knobs up here I can play with. So I'm going to turn off Siobhan's vocal for a second. And if I play this loop, I can manipulate in real time. And if I want to, I can record my knob moves as MIDI information, or I can record it as an audio performance. Either way, I have real-time control using knobs. That's pretty cool. So let me show you, just using up here, using the cutoff and the resonance controls. It's pretty cool. Here we go. So I can make them real lo-fi with the cutoff control. And then if I start adding in the resonance, and we're only just scratching the surface. There's all kinds of fun we could have with that. So check it out. Bring your samples into your Montage or MODX. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. This was a really special night for us at Yamaha Canada Music. We're really excited to bring this series to you, and I hope you've enjoyed the first episode that we've done here, and maybe gotten a few tidbits that might make your own music making a little more interesting. We'll see you in a month, and we're really excited about that. Please hop on over to Yamaha Canada Solutions. I want to thank Gina Kennedy for being with us tonight. Gina is so amazing, and we're so lucky to have her part of the Yamaha family and to have her here with us tonight. And I want to thank Sid Harris as well. And as a matter of fact, I think we'll let Sid take us out. Good night, everybody.
Yamaha is the way to go. I tell all the young cats, if you're starting out, especially on keys or any instrument, you know, the best thing to do is find an instrument you can grow with, you know. And to be honest, I'll tell them Yamaha is that company. Yamaha is that instrument you need, you know. The Yamaha Multi, the Yamaha Montage, the Yamaha YC61. Even if you go into the Yamaha CPs, like, you know, those are instruments you can grow with. It's easy to learn, but also it gives you that sound that will last a long time. It could even last a lifetime. So the best keyboard in the market, Yamaha keyboard is the best keyboard in the market. It's that warmth, it's that big boy keyboard, it's that, you know, it's that OG, you know? You guys keep pushing the game, you guys keep pushing the envelope, like, you know, when you thought that, oh, this is gonna be the plateau, you guys find another way to bring it up another level for us. So I thought it would be the Motif XF, but it might just be this Montage 7 right here. It might just have to be this Montage 7. I'll be like, make sure this has another, like, you know, bury me with this, put it on top of me, man. Guys, get yourself a Yamaha.